Many people are waiting for something dramatic, something unmistakable, something loud enough to silence all doubt. They expect the call of God to come like thunder, to interrupt life with force and urgency. But most of the time, that is not how it happens. God's call often comes quietly, gently, almost unnoticed, speaking not to the ears but to the heart. And because it is quiet, it is easy to miss. But the call may come as a persistent thought that will not leave you alone, a sense of restlessness when everything around you seems fine, a conviction that rises in moments of stillness. It may come when you are alone, when the noise fades, when the heart is exposed. God does not always compete with the noise of the world. He waits for you to be still enough to listen. Many miss the call because they are listening for something else. They want certainty without faith, clarity without obedience, comfort without change. But God often whispers before He ever shouts. He tests the heart before He redirects the life. The quiet call reveals desire. It shows whether you are willing to listen even when no one else hears it. But stillness is where the call becomes clear. But stillness is uncomfortable. Silence exposes motives, fears, and resistance. That is why many avoid it. They stay busy, distracted, occupied. Noise becomes a refuge. Yet in avoiding silence, they avoid the very place where God speaks most clearly. The quiet call is personal. It is not meant for everyone else to hear. It is meant for you. It is not announced publicly. It is planted inwardly. And when it comes, it carries weight. It stirs something deep. It challenges what is familiar. It invites change. But God's voice does not force itself. It invites, it waits, it respects the will of the listener. The call may come once, twice, or many times, but it always begins softly. It asks for attention before it demands action. It seeks surrender before it calls for sacrifice. Often people say they never heard the call, when in truth they heard it and ignored it. They felt it and dismissed it. They recognized it but delayed responding, not because it was unclear, but because it was inconvenient. Quiet obedience is harder than loud refusal. .br, the gentle call, is a test of sensitivity. Hearts that are attentive recognize it. Hearts that are hardened overlook it. That is why humility matters. Pride demands spectacle. Humility listens for whispers. God does not need volume to speak with authority. His quiet voice carries truth, direction, and purpose. When you listen closely, you realize it was never absent. It was always there, waiting for your attention. .br. So slow down, quiet your heart, remove the distractions, listen beyond the noise, because the call may not come in the way you expect, but when you finally hear it, you will realize it was speaking all along. Hearing the call is not only about whether God is speaking, it is about whether the heart is listening. Many times the voice is present, but the heart has grown dull, not because God stopped calling, but because distraction and disobedience slowly crowded out sensitivity. What once stirred conviction now feels distant, not because the call faded, but because attention shifted. Our distraction is subtle. It rarely arrives as something obviously harmful. It comes disguised as busyness, ambition, responsibility, and even success. Life fills up, schedules tighten, and priorities slowly rearrange themselves. Quiet moments disappear. Reflection becomes rare. And in the absence of stillness, the heart loses its ability to discern what truly matters. But disobedience works even more quietly. It begins with small delays, small compromises, small justifications. Later replaces now. Convenience replaces conviction. And over time, resistance forms, not loud, not rebellious, but passive. The heart knows what is being asked, but chooses comfort instead. Each ignored prompting makes the next one easier to dismiss. The danger is not that the call disappears, but that sensitivity does. Just as a muscle weakens when unused, spiritual hearing dulls when neglected. Conviction once felt deeply now feels faint. Direction once felt clear now feels confusing. And the heart wonders why clarity seems lost. Disobedience does not always look like open refusal. Often it looks like delay. waiting for better timing, waiting for clearer signs, waiting for more certainty. But obedience is rarely convenient, and clarity often follows action, not the other way around. BR fear also dulls hearing. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of surrender. When fear is allowed to remain unchallenged, it creates resistance to the call. The heart begins to protect itself instead of responding in faith. Noise plays its part as well. Constant input leaves little room for reflection. When the mind is crowded, the heart struggles to focus. The quiet voice becomes harder to distinguish amid constant stimulation. Not because it is weak, but because everything else is loud. Yet even in dullness, the call remains. God does not withdraw easily. He is patient. He continues to draw, to nudge, to remind. But the heart must be willing to soften again. Our restoration begins with honesty, acknowledging that. Distraction crept in, admitting that obedience was delayed, recognizing that fear played a role. There is no shame in recognition, only opportunity. Sensitivity can be regained. Stillness can be restored. Hearing can be sharpened again. It begins with humility, with clearing space, with choosing obedience over convenience. So examine the heart, remove what distracts, release what resists, and listen again, because the call has not stopped. It has been waiting for your attention. Some people believe that missing the call once means the opportunity is gone forever. They live with regret, thinking they waited too long, failed too badly, or drifted too far. But hear this clearly: God's patience is not weakness, and His call is never casual. When He calls, it is on purpose, and when He calls again, it is an act of mercy, not accident. God is not impatient like people. He does not give up because of delay. He understands hesitation, fear, and weakness better than we understand ourselves. When the call is unanswered the first time, it is not erased. It remains, waiting for the heart to be ready. Time does not cancel purpose. Failure does not disqualify destiny. Silence does not mean abandonment. The fact that the call returns is proof of patience. God calls again because what He intends still matters. He is not reacting to your mistakes. He is working through them. His purpose is steady even when your response is delayed. That second call is not weaker than the first. In many ways, it is stronger, clearer, and more urgent. Our patience does not mean permission to delay forever. The call is purposeful. Time is given, but it is not unlimited. God allows seasons of reflection, correction, and growth, but the call always moves toward action. Mercy gives room to respond, not excuses to remain unchanged. The second call often comes with deeper conviction. Life has taught lessons. Pride has been softened. Self-reliance has been challenged. What once felt optional now feels necessary. The heart hears differently after experience has shaped it. But God's patience is not passive. While you are waiting, He is working. He is shaping character, adjusting perspective, removing obstacles, and preparing you for what obedience will require. Even delays are not wasted when surrender follows. Many people confuse patience with approval of inaction. But God's patience is purposeful because it aims at transformation. He waits, not because the call has changed, but because you are still becoming ready to answer it. The second call is often quieter, but heavier. It carries the weight of time past and opportunities nearly missed. It asks not only for attention, but for surrender. It invites you to step forward with humility instead of confidence, trust instead of certainty. God does not call again to remind you of failure. He calls again to remind you of purpose. He does not reopen the door to shame you, but to welcome you. The call returns because what He placed within you, saint, matters, but if you are hearing it again, it is not coincidence. It is intention. It is patience paired with purpose. And that moment right now is evidence that grace is still reaching for you. Because when God calls again, it means your story is not finished yet. When the call comes again, many people shrink back in shame. They remember the first time they ignored it, the moments they resisted, the seasons they wasted. They assume the second call must be a reminder of failure, a quiet accusation pointing to what they did wrong. But that is not the heart of God. The second call is not a sentence of condemnation, it is an invitation to surrender. God does not call again to shame you. Shame pushes people away. Surrender draws them closer. The second call is gentle, but it is serious. It does not reopen wounds to humiliate. It opens arms to restore. It says, come back, align again, begin again. Many carry the weight of past disobedience as if it disqualifies them. They live under the illusion that they must first punish themselves before responding. But restoration does not require self-condemnation. It requires humility. God does not ask you to explain your past. He asks you to release it. The second call often arrives at a different season of life. Circumstances have changed. Perspectives have matured. What once felt like an interruption now feels like direction. What once felt demanding now feels necessary. This is not coincidence. It is grace meeting readiness. Surrender is not about perfection. It is about alignment. When God calls again, He is inviting you to lay down resistance, pride, fear, and excuses. Surrender means saying, I trust you more than I trust my comfort. I trust you more than I trust my understanding. The second call also reveals the tenderness of God's patience. He does not discard people because they hesitated. He does not cancel purpose because of delay. He meets people where they are and calls them forward from there. Our shame tells you to hide. Surrender tells you to come forward. Shame says you are unworthy. Surrender says grace is sufficient. The voice of shame pushes you inward. The voice of God calls you outward. Restoration begins the moment surrender replaces resistance, not when everything is fixed, not when all questions are answered, but when the heart yields. Obedience does not require certainty, it requires trust. Dati tiar the second. Decall is not a repeat of the first. It carries deeper meaning. It is shaped by experience, by lessons learned, by humility gained. It asks for a softer heart and a willing spirit. God is not looking for perfection in your response. He is looking for honesty. He is not measuring how quickly you respond, but whether you are willing now. You are. So do not let shame silence you. Do not let regret keep you frozen. The second call is not condemnation, it is restoration. And when you surrender to it, you step into grace that makes all things new. Answering the call of God always carries a cost, and that cost is rarely comfortable. It asks for release, not addition. It requires letting go of control, security, and familiar patterns that once felt safe. Many people say they want direction, purpose, and peace, but they hesitate when obedience begins to dismantle comfort. Yet the call is not meant to fit neatly into the life you have built. It is meant to transform it. Comfort is often the greatest obstacle to obedience. It convinces you that staying where you are is safer than stepping forward. It whispers that change can wait, that risk is unnecessary, that obedience can be delayed until conditions feel right. But the call of God rarely comes when everything feels convenient. It arrives when trust is required more than certainty. Control is another barrier. We want to know how things will unfold before we move. We want assurance of outcomes before we surrender direction. But faith does know. Grow where control dominates. The call invites you to release the illusion that you are steering your own destiny. Surrender does not mean weakness. It means alignment with something greater than your understanding. Letting go is not losing, it is making room. God does not remove things to leave emptiness. He removes them to replace what is temporary with what is eternal. But replacement cannot happen until release begins. Obedience often feels like subtraction before it becomes multiplication. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells you to be practical, cautious, realistic. But faith always stretches beyond comfort. When God calls, He does not ask you to see the entire path, only to take the next step. Obedience is not built on full visibility, it is built on trust. Answering the call may require releasing relationships, habits, or plans that no longer align with purpose. This is not punishment, it is preparation. What once served you may now restrict you. Growth demands separation from what no longer fits. The struggle is real because surrender is personal. It touches identity, security, and pride. But obedience reshapes those very things. Identity becomes rooted in purpose. Security shifts from circumstances to trust. Pride gives way to humility. Many delay answering because they fear losing themselves. But the truth is, obedience reveals who you were always meant to be. Comfort hides potential. Surrender unlocks it. The call does not promise ease, but it PR. Almas is meaning. It does not remove difficulty, but it provides direction. When you release control, you gain clarity. When you release comfort, you gain growth. The obedience is not about abandoning everything at once. It begins with willingness, with a heart that says yes, even when the path feels uncertain. Each step forward builds courage. Each act of surrender strengthens faith. So let go of what keeps you comfortable but stagnant. Release the need to control outcomes. Trust the call that is drawing you forward, because obedience begins where comfort ends and purpose begins where surrender starts. There is a moment when everything can change, not because circumstances suddenly shift, but because a decision is finally made. Responding to the call of God is not just a spiritual moment, it is a turning point that redirects the course of an entire life. When the call is answered, nothing remains the same. Not the heart, not the priorities, not the future. Many people underestimate the power of a single response. They think transformation requires years before it begins. But change starts immediately when obedience replaces hesitation. The moment you say yes, direction is restored. Confusion begins to fade. Purpose becomes clearer. Peace enters where uncertainty once lived. The outward changes may take time, but the inward shift is instant. Answering the call changes how you see yourself. You stop living as someone drifting and start living as someone sent. Identity moves from you and certainty to assignment. You are no longer reacting to life. You are responding to purpose. That shift alone alters decisions, relationships, and direction. It also changes how you view time. Moments stop being wasted. Seasons gain meaning. Even challenges are no longer random. They become part of preparation. When you know why you are moving, endurance becomes possible. Sacrifice makes sense. Waiting has purpose. Responding now matters because delay always carries cost. The call does not expire easily, but opportunities shift. The heart grows heavier with each hesitation. What could have been walked with peace becomes wrestled with regret. Obedience brings alignment. Delay brings tension. When the call is answered, growth accelerates. Faith deepens because it is practiced, not imagined. Strength develops because it is required. Trust matures because it is exercised. You become someone who walks forward instead of someone who wonders what might have been. Responding also impacts others. Your obedience creates pathways for those watching. Courage becomes contagious. Faith becomes visible. Lives intersect differently because one person chose to respond. You may never see the full reach of your yes, but it will be greater than you expect. The call is not about perfection before response. It is about willingness now. God does not ask you to arrive ready. He asks you to begin ready to trust. He shapes along the way. Direction becomes clearer as you move, not before. Urgency in the call, not because God is impatient, but because purpose waits. Life is not endless. Moments are not guaranteed. When the call returns, it is mercy offering movement, grace inviting decision. Responding now brings peace that delay cannot offer. It quiets the restless heart. It aligns the wandering mind. It restores meaning where confusion once lived. But you may feel unprepared, you may feel unsure, But obedience does not require full understanding, only full surrender. When you respond, God meets you in motion. So do not wait for another sign, another moment, another season, because when you answer the call now, you don't just change today, you change the direction of your entire life.